Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Jurassic Park from 1993. Jurassic Park was one of those all-encompassing 90s movies that if you grew up in the 90s, there's no way you didn't watch this movie with a bunch of your friends when you were a kid eating pizza because some mom was like, oh, you should come over, we rented Jurassic Park and we're gonna order some pizzas. And I did that so many times. I have fond memories of going over to someone's house with my whole family to watch Jurassic Park just because they had a really cool TV, and seeing this movie in the theater and knowing everyone knew the John Williams theme. It was just an all-encompassing, huge film. And in a way, that's kind of why I got sick of it in the later 90s, because it was so all-encompassing. It got just a little much for me. Now, I'm not gonna act like I don't like this movie. I'm not gonna really just shit on this movie, because Jurassic Park, regardless of the theories behind it and Spielberg in general, is an awesome, very entertaining, very fun movie. And rewatching it for this review, I definitely got to relive being excited and loving this movie again, because it'd been a while since I'd really just sat down and watched the whole thing. It's a thrilling experience, and I'm not gonna act like it's not, because it's a really great movie. It's a great thrilling ride for everyone. It's very universal. Spielberg at his most mass market popcorny that he's probably ever been and probably ever will be. It's Spielberg doing Spielberg. If you look at the Indiana Jones films or Jaws or E.T., most movies have a theory behind how they're made, especially in the new Hollywood era when these guys were inventing blockbusters like Spielberg and Lucas. When you look at the Indiana Jones films, it's doing the pulpy serial film, but it's doing it almost in a tongue-in-cheek way. It's very knowingly doing something like that. Jurassic Park is different because Jurassic Park isn't taking a style and being a comment on it. Jurassic Park is just a creature movie directed by Spielberg that he almost knew how to make a hit. And North by Northwest is almost the same way. It's like Hitchcock is at the height of his powers technically, and he's like, I know how to make a hit film. I know how to make a hit Hitchcock film, and he does it. Now, I love North by Northwest. North by Northwest is an amazingly entertaining film, but it's not as interesting. It's not as surreal. It's not as experimental. You can tell he's not being as playful. And the same with Spielberg's other kind of blockbuster films. You can tell he's messing around. He's doing different things. He's being stranger. He's an incredible technical director, and how he mixes that with character. And this film doesn't have character as much. It feels like he's literally taking scenes from a monster movie where they explain the ethics behind the monster and stuff at the beginning. It doesn't feel like he took one of those and directed it at an A level. It just feels like he's literally directing one of those, but with a major budget. It has a lot more in common with a film like Them than it does like with Jaws and its artistry. I think that's something that is why Jurassic Park works so well, is that it doesn't feel as dense really. That like makes it easier for an audience. I'm not saying an audience is dumb, but it does feel like a little lighter and easier to understand, and so you can really just dig your teeth into it. Basically, it's not about all this other stuff. It's just an amazing thrill ride. And Spielberg, he knew how to direct a Steven Spielberg movie better than anyone, and he presented an amazing, entertaining blockbuster. A man named John Hammond, played by Richard Attenborough, who has opened a park with dinosaurs, and he wants Dr. Grant, played by Sam Neill, and Dr. Ellie Sattler, played by Laura Dern, to come visit and endorse his new dinosaur park, even though they don't exactly believe that he's done it. But he doesn't tell them beforehand. He's just like, it's a park, I don't know, you're paleontologists, figure it out. And so he brings them along with Jeff Goldblum and a lawyer and with his grandkids, and he takes them there to show off his new park and show that he has actually made genetically modified dinosaurs and has opened a theme park to show them off to the world. And then as he's giving his first tour of the theme park, the electricity goes down because of an employee, Dennis Nedry, played by Wayne Knight, who has shut down the system so he can escape with dinosaur DNA to sell to a rival corporation. And so they have to survive a night in the park before the dinosaurs, and particularly the amazing T-Rex, before they're all either eaten or destroyed by either T-Rexes or velociraptors, and to come out alive. Now, it's important to note about Spielberg at this time because he had just come out of the beginning of the 80s with E.T., and really E.T.'s the end of a great blockbuster period from him, from Jaws to E.T. Even if he had 1941, doesn't matter. He still made some incredibly impressively made films and some of the biggest hits of all time. He literally started out the period with making the biggest hit of all time, then that being replaced by Star Wars, and then that being replaced by his own E.T. And this would actually be the third time he would have the highest grossing film of all time. I don't know of anyone else who's ever done that. But even though he had done that, the 80s were kind of a mixed bag for him. He made a lot of prestige pictures, The Color Purple, Empire of the Sun, Always, which really didn't work out for him. And then he made a film like Hook, which the interesting thing about Hook is when it came out, it was considered such a flop, and it was a flop critically, but it actually did make its money back quite a bit. And it almost feels like he wanted to have a big regular Spielberg-y hit, but he almost like kind of looked down on it. To be a well-respected director in the 80s and to get maybe an Oscar for Best Director, he kind of had to direct stuff like The Color Purple. He seemed to really want that respect. He seemed to really fighting for it. Like, he probably should have won Best Director for Jaws, or, you know, been nominated for Best Director for Jaws, or several other of the films he directed in his really great period from Jaws till E.T. But he didn't win, and it felt like he couldn't do that unless he made, like, quote-unquote a real movie. And there's even a part where Richard Attenborough is giving kind of a speech, who's actually the director who beat him for E.T. for directing Gandhi, about how he wanted to make something real. He didn't want to make something that was an illusion. And I think that's really what Spielberg was going through at the time. It's this whole need to make prestige pictures, that he can't win basically for a Spielberg movie. He has to win for this different kind of movie. He was fine with directing the Indiana Jones films, but then he got all that shit for the violence in Temple of Doom, and particularly for those scenes with child labor. So he almost like became like a little more cautious of it. And that kind of explains like how the violence is extremely toned down in this. He made this the same year as Schindler's List, which has to be one of the greatest years of his entire life. Like, he won the Oscar for Best Director for Schindler's List, and he won Best Picture, and he had the highest grossing film of the year and of all time. He just had an incredible run in 1993. I can't think of another director who's gotten anywhere close to that with two huge classics in the same year. He actually left post-production to work on Schindler's List. He left Lucas in charge, which might explain some of this, but he refers to it more as like a film that required a lot of craft, not a film he talks as much about with character. And it kind of is interesting when I think of Jaws and I think of Close Encounters and I think of E.T. I think of the character, but when you think of Jurassic Park, you think of more of the awe of it. It doesn't feel as adventurous, it doesn't feel as creatively exciting as it used to be, but it's still an exciting movie. I think that's the same thing with North by Northwest. It's like, I'm gonna sit back and enjoy a Hitchcock movie, and it's not gonna make you feel all icky. You can totally be involved in this kind of fantasy world, but he's a director who can do that better than like anyone who existed at the time. Now, lots of directors wanted to do Jurassic Park, some of them being Joe Dante, Tim Burton, and even Richard Donner, but Spielberg got it. He heard about it when it was being written, and he was working with Michael Crichton on a script for ER, which eventually became a TV show. And Spielberg had known that this would be a big hit, and even Universal said, look, you can make Schindler's List, which is the film he wanted to make first, but please make Jurassic Park first, because we feel like this will be the more commercial film. Like, duh. It does feel like he's going more to the creature thing that he hasn't done since Jaws. He's going back to it. Every character is wearing a different color. You have blue on Sam Neill, you have pinkish color on Laura Dern, you have black on Jeff Goldblum, you have white on Richard Attenborough. Every character has a distinct look and distinct clothing, so you always can separate them. I don't think the cinematography is as good as like the Indiana Jones films, which were shot by someone else, but this is shot by Dean Cundey. Dean Cundey was John Carpenter's cinematographer. He's the guy who did the opening shot in Halloween. He shot Escape from New York. He shot Big Trouble in Little China. He's a great DP. In fact, he's one of my favorites. He's also the guy who shot the Back to the Future movies, so Spielberg probably knew him because he executive produced those, I believe. And I don't feel like it's as interesting as his cinematography used to be. It's still well shot enough, but he's not really giving you like the awesome tracking shots you're used to, and the framing's just frankly a little less creative. There's nothing's like really draped in shadow too much. It's like very easy to get. Everything's like very brightly colored in this film. It feels like so ready for a pop culture audience. A lot of Spielberg's movies are very audience friendly, but it felt like they were like almost riskier and confident in a way, like, I don't care if you like this or not, I'm Spielberg, deal with it. And this film's like, I'm Spielberg, I'm doing what you want, I'm ready to please. And the cinematography feels like that as well. It like doesn't want to get too crazy, it doesn't want to do anything too wild. The only thing close to like a Halloween type Dean Cundey shot that I'm used to is when the camera's zooming in on Laura Dern, where she's like, oh, we're back in business, and the Velociraptor pops up behind her, which kind of makes me laugh. That's funny. He really doesn't have like the fun, awesome Dean Cundey shots that I really kind of like from Dean Cundey, and I think Spielberg could have more fun with. This is also the last time Spielberg worked with another cinematographer that wasn't Jaz Kaminski, who he's worked with on literally every movie since this. Like Schindler's List on, he's worked with this guy. I like his usual DP actually, but it does get a little much after a while that he's just working with the same guy, whereas his period before it felt like he was always kind of doing different looks each movie. It's amazing how perfectly well shot and how thrilling a lot of these sequences are. And Spielberg doesn't just totally go into like a poppy type of movie. That opening sequence reminds me of like Eisenstein. That T-Rex scene is just fucking crazy. The interesting thing is you think of all the other Spielberg films and he's hiding things. You don't really see what's going on. It's like all in your imagination. And there is really very little of that in Jurassic Park. It's just the opening sequence with the Velociraptor. There's the build up to the Velociraptors and the build up to the dinosaurs, but he gives that up really quickly. This film kind of just shows it to you. He gives you the Spielberg look and they're looking at him and they're like in awe, and then he just shows it to you. And you're like, oh, okay, no, I get it. It's a dinosaur and that's thrilling and these are CG effects. And the effects do actually hold up really well, but it does kind of make you miss the old guy who like made you imagine. And this film doesn't really make you imagine. It was amazing. It was thrilling to see a real T-Rex in a movie like that. And well, not a real T-Rex, but really see a T-Rex on screen in that way, especially with a computer. And I remember seeing this when I was a kid and I was 9 years old when this came out. When I saw it, I remember begging my dad and my parents and saying like, come on, Siskel and Ebert gave it 2 thumbs up, being so thrilled and scared out of my mind at some parts. I really hadn't seen a lot of horror movies then. And I remember that scene where the Velociraptor pops his head up when they're in the vents. I just held onto the armrest and picked up my feet and was just like holding onto these armrests. Holy shit, that is scary. There's so many moments that like I was not prepared for this kind of theater experience. Probably one of the most intense times I've been to the theater. So thrilling and exciting and amazing. And I was like, oh my god, I can't believe we saw this movie. Oh my god. But eventually you went to enough people's parents' house, like, we're having a barbecue and afterwards we're gonna watch Jurassic Park. And by like 1998, I'd really had enough. And it works really well with that. In a lot of ways, the colors of it reminds me of like something like The Avengers Now. Just a film that's ready for anyone to understand it. Foreign audiences can get it. Anyone can get it. It's not as specific. It's not as specific to a certain time or a certain place. It's specific to the 90s, but it does feel very universal. That a director can do this at the height of his powers and make it so entertaining shows how kind of awesome he can really be and shows the power of him as a director. But it's interesting, after this, he never made a film so bright before. Everything, even The Lost World, I remember all the interviews at the time were like, I'm making a darker movie than the first one. It's almost like he's embarrassed of doing this kind of thing. And Spielberg's interviews are kind of interesting because as much as he loves his movies, it feels like he almost gets they're popcorn films and they could do something greater. I would kind of argue like, yeah, but you made some of the greatest blockbusters. Like our whole era is informed by his filmmaking. Every summer movie season, I end up rewatching a lot of his like greater hits just because I'll watch so many movies that are influenced by him. This is sure his poppier movie. This is the film he made to have a hit. Almost like it worked perfectly. Like he precisely made a hit. There are certain things that feel more audience friendly. Certainly the lawyer getting eaten off the toilet, the dinosaur sneezing on the little girl, and then certain things that don't even make sense that he just did for suspense, particularly like when the T-Rex is attacking and he pushes the car over the ledge. If you watch earlier in the scene when they have a wide shot, there's no fucking ledge there. I've seen in documentaries people are on the crew and they're like, yeah, we told him that there's no ledge there, and he was like, I don't care, I want this to be suspenseful. And he did it. Every time I watch that sequence, I don't think about it until afterwards. I go, right, there's no ledge there. Damn it, I even knew that. And it doesn't matter because he directed it so well. Same with like when the T-Rex suddenly surprises everybody and eats that Velociraptor. Everything in the movie tells you when the T-Rex is coming, you're gonna hear these big thumps. Every scene with the T-Rex. And then suddenly he's like, surprise, I snuck up on you. I'm a T-Rex. It makes no sense, but it works. Every time I see that, I'm like, it doesn't make sense, but fuck, it fucking works. You can't argue with it. The one thing I find really intriguing about this movie is how often it brings up the merchandising and how often it brings up the selling of Jurassic Park, when this was a film that was heavily merchandised and had McDonald's toys, and even the part where the kids show up, Richard Attenborough goes, oh look, it's our target demographic. I feel like it's winking at me, and like I didn't pick up on this as a kid. There's a whole scene where the sad music's playing and it's literally panning over Jurassic Park merchandise, some of which I know I could have bought at the time. And then they're talking about the morals of just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Maybe I am reading too much into it, but it does feel like that debate over film blockbusters and film meaning something. And this film, it's not really saying anything other than dinosaurs are cool. Should it? fuck no. I don't think a Jurassic Park movie should say anything other than a T-Rex is awesome, but it's almost like winkingly nodding at itself that it shows the Jurassic Park logo so much in this movie. It's like all over this film. It's like imprinting on you like, this is the Jurassic Park logo. Buy the shirt with the stupid logo on it, which everybody did. It's like being satirical, but also actually just being corporate. The Lego movie is at least saying something about capitalism. This is just like hinting at it, but it doesn't really get into it, but it's definitely there, especially that Target demo line. I was like, whoa, I was that Target demo. God damn it. There isn't really anything wrong with the artistic intent. It doesn't really matter what the artistic intent is. It matters what the end result is. And regardless of Spielberg and even the studio itself knowing they were making a hit movie and knowing this would be a big blockbuster and Spielberg almost directing it as such, probably the safest direction he's ever given in his entire career. And really he cared more about this movie being suspenseful and amazing and thrilling than anything else, and that's what he did. He made a film that even critics at the time who loved this movie would still say, you're seeing it more for the dinosaurs than the characters. And you can say, like, that's sad. How has it come that he's like now just almost like eating his own tail? He's not making a postmodern film, he's just making a monster movie now. But at the same time, it's a thrilling, amazing monster movie, and I kind of don't care. Yeah, I recognize all that. Yeah, I recognize I could see a lot of these people in better movies and more artistically adventurous movies, but it's Jurassic Park, and maybe I should just relax and eat my pizza and have a good time watching an awesome, thrilling movie really loud and hearing that Tyrannosaurus Rex roar. And I think that's really what Jurassic Park is about. So if you have seen Jurassic Park and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. I will be doing reviews of the other 2 Jurassic Park sequels before Jurassic World, and those will be coming out next week. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.